Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a matinee edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, and I have myself an awesome crew today off the I-75 Triangle. I'm originating from southern Florida. Steve Balestrieri is out in the Fort Myers area, and Tom Korun, an iconic broadcaster out in the Tampa Bay area, is kind enough to join us this afternoon. And Tom, I was very glad that two people with Tampa paths have crossed this afternoon.
Yeah, I'm really glad. I'm glad you invited me on. I've been looking forward to this for about a week now. We've talked with you and Steve. I think it's going to be a blast here. Let's get it going, folks.
Well, I don't use the word think, Tom. I know it's going to be a blast. So, now, I have to tip my cap because I'm wearing a University of South Florida hat. And folks, if you want to know the theme of this show, okay, it's called Talking Tampa Bay Sports. We're going to talk on a lot of different levels. But before we do so, Tom, why don't you give the audience an overview right now of your background? I know you work with Dick Crippen, right? But give us the overall perspective about where you were able to work out in the Tampa Bay area.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I actually came to the Tampa Bay area to do radio, to do the play-by-play for the Tampa Bay Bandits, because Gene Deckerhoff could not do both. But then, as we all know, the USFL folded, and believe it or not, I started to go. I got the job at Channel 8. It wasn't that much long thereafter. Only because of the fact that the assistant news director happened to be a news director of a competing station that I used to work with way back when I was in Iowa. And he knew what I could do, and so I did. I got to work with Dick Griffin. I got to work with Chris Thomas, who legend in many ways. He was an excellent broadcaster as well. And I also worked for Sunshine Network at that time, was what it was called, which is Fox Sports Net, which is now Valley Sports. And then I went to work for ABC and also did the Bucks broadcast with Gene Deckerhoff and Scott Brantley for a couple of years. Did Rowdies. I did their indoor soccer play-by-play. So yeah, I've been around and done quite a few things.
Now, according to you were telling me, again, for those of you in Tampa area, I believe WFTS, is that the ABC affiliate, Channel 28 in Tampa, is that correct?
That's correct. That's the ABC affiliate, right.
Right, and then you mentioned moments ago about Sunshine Sports Network with Fox Sportsnet and, of course, Channel 8, which is owned by Media General. And I remember that I actually used to work nearby at the Tampa Tribune, and they were all owned by the same conglomerate. So, folks, just so you know, not only am I a graduate of the University of South Florida, but I worked at the Tampa Tribune. And I'm going to tell you, my time at the Tampa Tribune from 1984 to 86 was absolutely fantastic, because not only did I make a lot of lifelong friends over there, but I had learned a lot about deadline writing, and I had some of the best editors there. And if you're in Tampa and you can't gain a whole lot from Tom McEwen, shame on you. And I can name drop.
Really, right. It's really cool, Scott and Steve.
What's that?
When in my business in TV, we're looked at by a number of newspaper guys as just a bunch of fucking heads. All right. But the one thing that I had to earn the respect, and that's where I went for, was respect from all the newspaper people, because the TV people I thought were basically lazy. So, you had to put your nose to the grindstone. You had to go fish out stories. You had to get out of the office. You weren't just some guy that sits in front of an inanimate object camera and talk to people. And I got to know so many people working at the Tampa Tribune. We go out, have a few pops, enjoy. But I earned the respect, and I think that's one of the things that I enjoyed the most. There was no competition between me and anybody at that paper, or anybody at the St. Pete Times, which it was called back then.
Right.
There wasn't that. My competition basically was with the other TV stations, but back in the FLA days back then, we had no competition. It was incredible. The Seinfeld era, our ratings were so big. Yeah, it was Scott. The media in general made so much money they didn't know what to do with it. We're covering sporting events. There's just no reason why we should be covering them. We're just traveling. It was awesome. Love that.
Well, amazingly enough, Tom, when you talk about the Tampa Tribune, and Steve, obviously you get to soak in a little bit of Tampa stuff here, and we're going to have a lot more fun as the show goes along. But think about it, Tom McEwen, they don't get any better than that. Joe DeSalvo was unbelievable to work with. A guy by the name of Rick Nelson was great to work with. In fact, I want to get to a quick story about Rick Nelson, and then I can mention Jim Henry, Joey Johnson hired me, Nick Puglisi, Herb Branham, Chris Harry, Mick Elliott, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
So, if I'm missing a few names, let that be the worst thing I've done, but at least these are the ones that come to mind as we continue to do this show live. But one of my favorite stories working with Rick Nelson, though, was when I covered the Florida State League All-Star game out in Kissimmee, Florida. And I'll never forget the time when that was a brand new stadium where the Houston Astros had set up shop. I was covering an All-Star game, and I couldn't get my story to transmit 5 times. So Rick Nelson was able to talk to the people, extended my deadline, and I had to dictate 2 stories. And 2 stories, Steve, not 1, but 2. And we still made it in time. And at that time, I was getting paid not only for mileage, but also per story. So when you're at the University of South Florida and you need every story to pay your tuition, the number tends to get magnified. But let me tell you, my experience with the Tampa Tribune was unbelievable. Another guy who I really liked was Mike O'Keefe as well. Oh, Joe DeSalvo. I mean, the list goes on and on. These were just some of the most unbelievable people. Another one that you might remember would be Tom Ford as well.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so anyway, I don't want to bore too many people with all these Tampa Tribunes because I'll probably forget a few more names. So we'll go ahead and transition from the Tampa Tribune to some Tampa sports. And then for the meat of this broadcast, we're going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. With that said, okay, let's talk about the much important discussion about the Tampa Bay Rays Stadium. We know they play at Tropicana Field. I've always said, build it in Hillsborough County. They build it in Pinellas County. And Tom, all you have out there is a first-class mess. Give us the latest on what's going on with the Tampa Bay Rays Stadium. Otherwise, will we ever see them in Montreal? Of course, everybody that wants a team needs to have a stadium. Build it, they will come. But, we're focusing on the Tampa area. So, Tom, give us the latest on the Tampa situation with the Rays.
Well, here's the situation that we have here. There is really one site that they're interested in, that all the parties are interested in, having to be in Ybor City. It's probably not the most optimum place because of what I think might be a problem with traffic. But the other problem is the infrastructure. You're not dealing with just one parcel of property. You're dealing with a multitude of properties that are owned by a guy by the name of Darryl Shaw. The question is are they going to be able to get all these properties all sold at the time, all processed infrastructure? Is that going to be able to be planned out accordingly? And then who's going to pay for what? That's the big question. You're not going to see a dime come from the taxpayers. There's nobody that's going to pass this in a referendum. The mayor said she's not going to bring it up. Stu Sternberg has got to at least come up with half the amount of money. And how much that's going to be, I guess we go back to the old numbers. So what they were looking at is anywhere between 800 million to $1 billion. And, that's a lot of money. And I don't know. I hope they can find a way to do it. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I can tell you that there is an absolute stand against any taxpayer money to pay for the state.
Well, I know one thing. We all know that Major League Baseball won't survive in Pinellas County. We know where Tropicana Field isn't the best area, and I would really doubt whether or not by the Bayfront whether it would be suitable. So I think the only chance you have of Major League Baseball in the Tampa Bay area, Tom, is in Hillsborough County. And many, many years ago, they were actually talking about building it where Al Lopez Field was, adjacent to the football stadium, which at that time was Tampa Stadium. I know they built Raymond James Stadium. And I still think there's a fair amount of land if they wanted to do something. I don't think there's any other location would make any more sense except right off of Dale Mabry, right next to the Bucks. Even though you have the Yankees across the street, to me, I think that's the only place that makes sense to make it. And I know that at that time they were competing for it, but St. Petersburg built the stadium, and Tampa said, you know what? Okay, you want it bad enough, you can have it. And ever since then, it's a shame because I do believe, being from that, having been in that area, that the Tampa Bay area can support Major League Baseball. I've been a firm believer. Not only are they a great local sports town, but you have a lot of Midwestern people as well. So, but all right. So, comment real quickly before we move on. Okay, about Hillsborough County. Is that the only place for Major League Baseball, Tom?
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems to be the only place. The one thing, let's put it this way, it's gone out of Pinellas County. All notions are off the table. There's no way they tried it. It didn't work. But what they do have is tremendous television. The ratings are excellent. So there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Now they're saying, well, if they bring it over here to Tampa, to the Hillsborough side, that there'll be more people coming. They'll be able to draw from a younger skew. The highway will bring them in from Lakeland, the Orlando area. That would be the biggest problem they have is they really have no backing from the business center. There is no their luxury boxes and all that. They have nothing. So I think that they need to really find a way to ingratiate themselves back into the beginning in some way, shape, or form. Stu is a nice guy. Stu Sternberg, who's the owner of the place, is a nice guy. But they have really done nothing at all to try and really put a shovel down and become the roots of the area. I just have never seen it, unfortunately. There's always been something that's blocked it. So hopefully he'll be able to find what he needs to find in the way of a partner in financing, however it's going to work through whatever state, whatever. We'll see. I'm skeptical. I'm still skeptical.
Well, the best part about it, the lease expires in 2027, so the Rays aren't going to be hooked there any much longer than that. They're going to have to do something. Otherwise, they're going to have to make long-term plans. And I know Commissioner Rob Manfred would not have a problem with the team ultimately moving. But with that said, we'll move on to the next subject and talk about my alma mater, University of South Florida. I know they're talking about an on-campus stadium there. They currently play at Raymond James Stadium. And I know that there was a recent $5 million gift towards the project. And I know that the University of Central Florida has got an invitation to the Big 12 conference. So this is a two-part question, Tom. Okay, do you ever see the possibility that USF would get an on-campus stadium?
Yeah, I see the possibility. Probability? I don't know. I just don't know. There's always a lot of talk in a university. Let's see it get done. Frank Bersani, by the way, is the individual. He and his wife are the individuals that down that $5 million towards the new stadium. But we're talking something upwards of $200 to $300 million. Another problem, in much the same fashion as the Rays, they don't have the backing. They don't have the endowment. The boosters. This isn't the University of Florida or Miami or something with some bucks. They just don't seem to have it, and I'm hoping that some way, shape, or form, they are going to find a way to do it as well. And I'm skeptical about it. I think they're doing fine. Over here, using the Raymond James Stadium, they still have, I think, the leases on until 2027. So they have a bit of time to try and get this thing organized. But it's the financing guys, and in this day and age right now, I mean, it's getting harder. Banks are getting tougher. We're going to have to see how this is all going to play out. There isn't anybody or a group of people that can pony up that kind of money.
Tom, does the school really want their own stadium, or are they happy playing at Raymond James?
No, they want a stadium on campus. They want it there. They've always wanted it there. They just have never, they talked about it, but then it went away. And then they said, well, then we'll put something else there, like a intramural field. And then, everything's got, put planned and spent money on other things. And they did work on their athletic facility, at general athletic facility. But when it came down to this football stadium, it was the cost factor. And Leroy Selman led the charge for this. Leroy was a tremendous ombudsman. And I'll tell you, Mike Kelly, who is their athletic director, he's got a lot of clout. He knows a lot of people. I think they've got a better chance right now of getting into a Big Five conference than they do getting a stadium. That's my thought. Because of Mike. Only because of Mike. Not because the basketball team can't win. The football team isn't playing well. You've got to be a winner. You can't, you just can't lollipop your way into a Big Five, despite the fact that the television market that we have here. You've got to show something, and they haven't shown it. And who has is University of Central Florida, hence, they're making their moves.
It's amazing how you bring that up, because that, GMTA folks want to know what the acronym is. Great minds think alike. So thanks, Tom. I appreciate that, because that was my next question anyways, all right? But that said, Raymond James isn't the worst place in the world for them to play ball. It's a first-class stadium anyways. But yeah, and I've always viewed USF Community School, but let's not kid ourselves, on campus is the way to go. So with that said, okay, Tom, and Steve, you kind of segued into where I was going with this anyways, all right? Do you feel that the lack of an on-campus stadium prevented USF from making it to a Power 5 conference?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to say more no than yes. I think everybody, obviously all the big conference schools have their own stadiums. This is sort of a unique situation. It was supposedly to be something that was there as a bridge for them to build that stadium. They have had something to do with it, but I really think what really had more to do with it is the fact that football and basketball were not successful. As successful, they didn't, pop out. There wasn't except for Jim Levitt's year in football, when they got all the way up to number 2 in the country, and then proceeded to lose 3 straight and drop right off the play of life. There has been nothing really done as far as wins losses to really booster their position with any conference, or for that matter, just in the general national public.
Interesting. All right, well, let's move on to hockey a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Tampa Bay, obviously, home of the defending Stanley Cup champion, the Tampa Bay Lightning. And, first of all, my hometown team, the Detroit Red Wings, I say they're about 2 years out, or so, and they have Steve Yzerman running the show. So I would say that the Red Wings are in good hands with Steve Yzerman. You have the Florida Panthers in their division. Right now, let's just talk a little bit about where everybody's at. In terms of overall record-wise points, you got Colorado Avalanche leading the way with 87 points. The Carolina Hurricanes are 85. Florida Panthers are 85 as well, and the Tampa Bay Lightning 80. And Steve, for whatever it's worth, the Boston Bruins are 9th best overall with 75 points. The Red Wings are 23rd overall with 55. I know the Red Wings are in the midst of a rebuild. So I guess with that said, Tom, do you feel that the Tampa Bay Lightning are poised to repeat?
Wow, again? I would say that this year they are less likely to repeat. I think Colorado is the best team by far at this stage of the game. But the situation the Lightning have right now is right now they're very healthy, which is good. If they can make this winning to get themselves through April and then getting up into the playoffs, I think they have a better chance of repeating. If they got a blip on the screen, they've lost 2 straight here. but they always seem at this time of the year, just before trade deadline, they seem to have a problem. And they run into a mini slump. They lost, like, I think it was 4 of 6 just before the middle April, the trade deadline last year. This year, they've lost 2 in a row now. They're on this West Coast swing, a Canadian swing. So, I just don't. I think they have too much inconsistency, more so than I've seen before. It's the same. It's the same thing, but it's more prevalent this year. Massey has done a tremendous job keeping them in some games that they had no business taking and winning.
Yeah, I read some. I don't know how accurate it is that the Lightning were trying to swing a deal for Ryan Getzlaf. Is there any truth to that?
To swing a deal. Well, first of all, they don't have any cap room. I don't know how in the world they're going to be able to swing any kind of a deal. Now, Bristol, he's I'll tell you what, he pulled a rabbit out of his hat last year, and we'll see what he can manufacture this year. But I don't think they really have. See, they don't have a player on their roster right now that they can send down without clearing waivers. Okay, they had Cal Foote last year. They have one other player. You know, they can get rid of some of that salary to make some room, get the Kudros. You know, get those guys to solidify their lineup that they wanted to have. He's going to look, but I'm going to say that they're probably going to have to hold back. I don't think they're going to make a trade here before the deadline.
And let me talk a little bit about the Florida Panthers, since I am based in the area of Southern Florida. You know, if I were a Panthers fan, first of all, the job that General Manager Bill Zito has done has been nothing short of phenomenal. If there's a guy who I think should be Executive of the Year, Bill Zito would be a guy that would be right near the top. The only thing I worry about with the Panthers, number one, is they haven't won a playoff series in this millennium. So you need to kind of win that playoff series first to get the monkey off your back. And you know what? To me, Andrew Brunette has done a really super job on an interim basis, and I'm sure that interim tag will be long gone, as Ernie Harwell would once say of the Detroit Tigers. But, you know, I think the one thing that, to me, is I felt better with Joel Quenneville as the coach because he's won Stanley Cups before. And I know the Panthers lost to the Lightning last year, so they were making progress. So I think the experience factor behind the bench without Joel Quenneville, Tom and Steve, to me, could bite them later on. And again, let's be skeptical as I may be, the Panthers are poised. They're a hungry team. They're primed. And, you know, when you go into a season with a chip on your shoulder, and I've seen it so many times, Steve, I know you have, where you have a great year, you can almost taste it, and then all of a sudden you have that magical run. Are the Panthers that team that could probably have the magical run? I don't know, but they need to win a playoff series first, and I wonder about Joel Quenneville. But with that said, that's what my thinking is, Tom. What about the Florida Panthers? Do you think that this team has a chance to win it all?
Yeah, I think they've got a really good, solid team. I think they got depth there as well. Do they have an opportunity? I think they do. I think they really do. They play the Lightning ball, and I want to use that team as the barometer. The Stanley Cups. They've got every possibility, I think, to make a good run.
As far as the Boston Bruins, Steve, you know what? As long as they make the playoffs, anything is capable of happening there. What's that?
I really don't. I'm just kidding. So, Steve, you're a Bruins guy?
Yeah. Big Patrice Bergeron guy.
All right. The Bruins.
But they don't have I don't think they have the goaltending. So that's my take on them. I'm not sold on Swayman,
That's okay.
So, Tom, give us your observations about what kind of a job that Steve Yzerman is going to do with the Red Wings, since obviously he did a tremendous job with the Lightning.
Dude, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
That's okay. Steve Eiserman is running the show in Detroit.
It's tremendous. Let me tell you something. You for everybody that's in Detroit, I know they've got to be thankful that they've got him back. I miss him, but the good news is that Steve was never the type of individual to be concerned about having someone along his side to groom him to have some successor. Because I always thought that perhaps in the back of his mind that his what lifelong situation and ending was going to be with the Detroit Red Wings. He came here, did a tremendous job with Julian Brisbois. He brought right up, and this team did not miss a beat. So to that, I thank Steve. I've met him at the golf club. He's just a great guy. He's easy to deal with, to make deals, and Julian learned a lot from him. But I miss him. I miss him. I wish he was still around for me. Life goes on.
All right. Well, you know what? I know everybody out here on this broadcast is waiting for football, so why don't we just go ahead and why don't we kick off and talk about some of our football topics? Yes, folks, pun intended. Okay. By the way, my name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Madmouth. Pleased to be joined this afternoon by Tom Korun, a iconic broadcaster out in the Tampa Bay area, and my iconic co-host is Steve Balestrieri. We're here with you today. Just so you know, folks, you can go ahead and hear this show on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, or you can find it on our YouTube channel. All you need to do is subscribe. Go to www.southfloridatribune.com. If you want to check out the website, and I got news for you, our controller, Sandy Ebling, does an awesome job. So with that said, yes, it is football time. And who are you going to lead it off with? Yes, Mr. Patriot, Tom Brady. Okay, so let's talk about the effect that Tom Brady, has had on the Tampa Bay area in his short couple of years there.
Well, you can imagine. It was never a quarterback really in that magazine before Tom Brady. There doesn't appear to be one coming on the horizon after Tom Brady. You have to go here for 2 years. You get used to that. He brings you one Super Bowl. They fall short in another, and that wasn't his fault. It's a very difficult situation, I think, for the fans. Because things were rolling so much for 2 years, and then all of a sudden, now what? And now what? Behind door number 2 or door number 3 or door number 4. So at this stage of the game, Tom is, I think first of all, I think he's going to stay with them. People are saying, no, to wait it out, to force the Bucs to try and trade. Well, it'd be fine. I think the Bucs would find that if they could get something really reasonable in return. I don't think they'd have a problem with that because they could use some draft. But at this stage of the game, life is not a Balestrieri, let's say. Keep driving by the stadium with his big picture down from Raymond James Stadium. But since he's still their property, he's still up. So if he hasn't announced his retirement position, and announced his retirement, but he hasn't said anything. Right now, he's still a part.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. Hey, Tom, you know what? I'm not so sure that Brady's ready to call it a career yet. Got $20 million out there to be had. And, until a guy sends his retirement papers in, okay, sorry, Yogi Berra, when I say it's not over till it's over, I could definitely preference that thing. So, you know what? I know that there's more that will be ultimately uncovered with this thing later on down the road. But I am not really sold on the Brady retirement. But there's no better person than I'm going to defer to, right, Steve Balestrieri, about whether Tom Brady is really retired. Seriously.
I think he is. I most definitely think he is. Brady's not the type to go around and, play the Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre type game, where, I think I'm going to retire and all this. He always said that he was missing his kids growing up. It's not like he needs the money. He's made a ton of it. He has a very successful business in his own right. His wife makes more money than he does. So it's not like, that 20 million is burning a hole in his pocket because they really don't need it. So I think they're going to retire down in South Florida. I heard they were building a place down there. I think he's going to ride off in the sunset and enjoy life while he still can.
Well, I guess, Tom, if your final game of your career is losing to Matt Stafford, the eventual Super Bowl champion, it's not the worst thing that could ever happen, knowing that Matt ended up winning his first one, and at least everybody will get off his back, and that Tom Brady's going to lose to Matthew Stafford. Life could be a whole lot worse than that, right, Tom?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, and I tell you this: if I'm Tom Brady, I'm pissed at the defense. They gave that game back. He once again proved who he is, and then within 20 seconds, Cooper Kupp is wide open. And why? Well, we'll probably get into this, I'm sure, later in the show. But I'm telling you right now that they should have never lost that football game. The Bucs know they should have never lost that game. And Tom Brady is probably just beside himself to think that they did lose the game.
So with that said, okay, we're talking about Tom Brady, Tom. Let's talk about the Bucs succession plan. I know Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask are certainly on the squad right now. That's now, of course, we have free agency, starting trades, and so forth. And I'm sure more and more names will pop up. I don't see the Bucs drafting a quarterback. If they're going to do anything, they'd probably trade one for one or acquiring one in free agency. But you're close to that situation, Tom. Let's talk about Blaine Gabbert, Kyle Trask, or maybe etc. etc. What's going on after Tommy?
Well, I think Gabbert would be the guy that they would have to turn Kyle Trask. First of all, I didn't like that. Let's assume that that he will have an opportunity down the line. It's not going to be in the States. There are some people that say they should, might as well. But I don't think I want to put. If they think that he could be an heir apparent down the line, I'm not putting him behind that offensive line right now, where they have some big holes to fill because of A, retirement or B, free agency. So I think Blaine Gabbert is going to be the guy. He's a cerebral guy, got a strong arm. He just hasn't had an opportunity to really do anything in the last several years, and he's pretty much been, shoveled on the post. I don't have a problem. Forget about they're going to go after Watson. They're going to go here. They're going to go there. They are. They love. I think. Deshaun Watson would be the guy they would go after, but when you've got 22 women out there, saying what they're saying about him. I mean, that's a lot. You can't take a chance on what his situation is going to be, and I'd be able to help you at all the entire season. Seattle are currently like they take a run at him, thinking that all this is going to be. Right now, I think Blaine Gabbert is going to be the starting quarterback of the Bucs.
Well, Bruce Arians went out, Tom, and said that Blaine Gabbert's never had as good of a team around him anyway. So, Steve, with that said, Steve, obviously, are you drinking the Blaine Gabbert Kool-Aid based on what Bruce Arians is saying, that, Blaine's never had any capable players around him, and I know we're going to trust a lot more with the Buccaneers shortly. I don't know, Steve, you were really not too sure and sold on Gabbert, but think about it. He's with the Buccaneers, and Bruce Arians, we all know, is a heck of a coach, offensive coach. But are you drinking the Blaine Gabbert Kool-Aid, Steve Balestrieri?
I think for this year, yes. I don't think he's any kind of long-term answer, but I think, when you're looking at things just in the realm of he's going to be their bridge guy, and they'll try to find somebody either by trade or free agency or the draft. I don't think it'll be this year. I know a lot of people keep talking about Deshaun Watson like Tom did, and it's like with all of the questions surrounding him, I mean, no one's going to make a move for him until all of this is figured out one way or the other, because you're talking about a massive investment in a kid that quite possibly, I mean, he might never play football again. If all of these allegations turn out to be true, he might never play again. He might end up in jail even. So you don't know. It's so no one's going to make that kind of investment. So and what Bruce Arians is saying is kind of trying to prime the pump a little bit and saying, well, he's never had that great a team around him, which is very true. But at the same time, I'm not a big Blaine Gabbert fan either, but I think he can be serviceable for them, at least in the meantime. And they still do have quite a few weapons for him to use. They do need to re-sign some of their guys. I think, with Godwin coming back, hopefully he'll be healthy. But, yeah, I think Gabbert will be their bridge guy at least for 2022.
Well, I'm a big fan of one, good coaching, head coach, quarterback coach, offensive coordinator. And, if they didn't think Kyle Trask was capable, Tom, okay, I don't think they would have picked him. They're not stupid. I believe their general manager is Jason Light, I believe, right?
Yes.
So, this guy has a good eye for talent, so I wouldn't really necessarily write off Kyle Trask. So I see Kyle Trask making a move in 2022. No, the only way I could see him getting in there is in the event of an injury, but I wouldn't sell coaching short, and I think you guys are both on to something as well, that, hey, give the guy a chance with a suitable supporting cast and good coaching. So I'm right with you guys all the way. As we move things along a little bit, Tom, you talked about the fact that the Buccaneers have a fair amount of cap space. So what are they going to do with the money?
The problem that they have right now, the Brady situation is going to bring them about $10 million in cap space after was it June 21st or whatever? I forget the date. And then with that $10 million, they might be able to maneuver something. But guys, they're going to lose a lot of people. First of all, making Godwin their big game, the franchise player again. That takes Carlton Davis out of the equation. He's the best corner. He's not a super corner, but he's their best corner. They're going to lose him. He's going to end up getting a big mega deal out there that someone's going to pay for him. I just really wasn't enthralled with the entire secondary. I thought it was the football acumen some of these guys have played. I don't know them well enough. I haven't had, I've been retired, so I haven't had a chance to be in the locker room and talk to them and try and, feel it out. But I just see it on the field, and I see stuff that my high school football coach would beat me up, and I can't understand how at that level they can make mistakes that they did. But they have so many holes to fill, guys, that they want to say it's not a rebuild, it's a reload. Now it's a rebuild. They're going to rebuild. They're going to have to rebuild. They might get, they're going to sign Jensen, center, for 12, 13 million. Okay? Alex Kemp is probably going to afford him. Eric Finning can bring back. He was a go back. All right? But then you lose Barnett. You lose Barnett and you all of a sudden decide to retire at the age of 28. Well, you're looking at your three middle guys between tackles, and your tackles are old. One of them is old, except for worse. I mean, it's not easy. It's easy being these guys right now. They're sort of in a jam. Where do they go? The draft. I mean, where do they start? I can imagine right now that. I can imagine that Mike and Arians are having some beers over the restaurants at Del May. Trying to figure this out because it's going to be a very difficult situation to get back to where they were.
Looking at that cap structure, do you think Well, I kind of have the feeling Jason Pierre-Paul they're going to let walk just because his age and he's getting up there. But do you think they bring back the Ndamukong Suh? And even though he's older, but he's been playing on 1-year deals.
Yeah, he's played on several 1-year deals with this team, and he didn't cost him hardly anything. What I saw out of him last year was pretty amazing considering his age. Would he be a possibility? There could be a possibility, but I think it's up to him. Does he want to play? Jason Pierre-Paul. What do you do with him? He's going to cost you a ton. JPP. I mean, I just think it's overpriced to pay him the kind of money you're going to have to pay him. They have to be judicious about this. They have to really think long and hard and say, all right, we can't keep kicking the can down the street. They're kicking the dead money goes down the street. All these guaranteed things that go above and beyond that they kick down and amortize it over so many years and get hit in the back end of it. All this, cumulative, and that's where they are right now. They're fighting a battle of money, and they have to open up money in order to do what they think they need to do. One is to get younger, and two is they have probably 5-6 holes, 5 or 6 serious holes, because the players that were there last year most likely will not be there.
Well, amazingly enough, what you guys are talking about, now I want to talk about this a little too. Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh, it was great to bring them back when they attempted to repeat, okay? Because I know that the Buccaneers wanted to do everything they could to get everybody back so that they could make another run. So with that said, again, Ndamukong Suh, to me, doesn't miss games, and he's a presence on the defense. But okay, so let me follow up with you. Okay, if I were going to, on a scale of 1 to 10, Tom, with 10 being most likely versus 1 not being likely, Jason Pierre-Paul, what number would you give him?
I give it 2. I give it 2.
2. Okay. What about Ndamukong Suh?
I think, frankly, they'd like to have him back, but I also think it's up to the other time too. Who would I give him? I'm going to give him a 7.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'll give him a 7.
So Ndamukong Suh,
I think he's got a 3/4 chance to get that.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, just want to make sure I have it straight. Ndamukong Suh, you would give a 7 on the high side, or Jason Pierre-Paul is on the lower end at 2, coming back. Right. Steve, what are your thoughts about what Tom just said?
I absolutely agree with that. I think, when you look at the way Suh played next to Vita Vea, those two are really, really dominating inside. I think they need to bring back Golston as well, if they can make the money work. But, I just think I like JPP, but I think he's a luxury at this point rather than a need.
Okay. Yeah. Great point. Golston needs to come back. They have to find a way. I think he's one of the guys that is high up on their free agent list to try and make things work out. Now that they've got the Godwin situation solidified, that in the pecking order, I think Golston is right up there among the guys that they really want to have back.
All right, Tom, you made an interesting point. Now I'm going to talk about a little bit myself again, that we know that the defense obviously failed the Buccaneers against the Rams because obviously that was a game for them, Brady with a comeback of epic proportions, but unfortunately they gave it away. Well, let's talk a little bit more in detail about solidifying the defense. What do they actually have to do to solidify that defense? Is there a particular thing or a multitude of things, Tom, that they have to do?
Well, first of all, let's deal with personnel. Personnel, they need a real consistent pass rush. One of the things that could have saved them in that game against the Rams, despite the fact that secondary was, in my estimation, average, is if that pass rush was there at Stafford would have been able to move, but he wasn't. He was pitching and catching. But just throw that game out. The consistency level of the pass rush is not there. Some games they look world beaters, and some games they look like they can't get off the ball. I think they need help. I think they need to look at perhaps a good edge rush, another edge that may help them. But fortunately, they're so far down the list in the draft. I don't know if there really is one that would make sense as far as value. They need at secondary, and I'll just go back to it. I don't understand why there be so much lack of communication across this three games. It's just flat out caution. Three games himself has been, and one of them was against the Rams. It's unconscionable to me how that can happen, why it's happening. I can't point to one person, but it's a moment. It's more than one person out of that a lot. It's two or three. They don't know what they think. It's insane. Frankly, I wish they'd start looking. What they're going to have to do in the draft, they're going to have to go offense. They're going to have to do something. They've got to make up the loss. That's the guy with money back. Okay. The kid for Boston College might get money if they go that. But I wish they could get an edge rusher because they really need it. We've been trying for quarterback sacks for a long time. They come in spurts, but they're not consistent. And this football team needs that type of consistency. And I don't think they have it on the football.
All right, so with that said, okay, I wasn't sure. All right, so give me, in your idea, what they have to do with the defense again to shore it up.
They got to need a edge rusher. They need to get more pressure on the football. Okay, that's number one concern. The secondary is the average secondary. Okay, some say, well, he might be a little bit better than average. He's pretty good. He covers number one receivers. Yeah, well, I seen him cover. He did a hell of a job against Cooper Cup. And for other games in there, but he got and he's been hurt. And when he's hurt, he can't play. He really becomes out. All right. There's some guys that are just that good that can suck it up, play, and still be effective. I don't see one of them, the secondary guy, being that guy, except maybe Antonio. Is a good player that's strong and tough. They need tougher guys.
I agree with that. I think, when you're looking at things other than offensive line, I think cornerback is a really big need for them. I know you mentioned edge rusher as well. But, their cornerbacks were decimated by injury last year. And it really, if Davis leaves in free agency, the cover's pretty bare there, I think, at corner, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then at least Bunning is your elite corner, and he's elite. I sound like a Debbie Downer with these guys, but they might have some talent athletically, but it doesn't equate when you can't think your way through the game. And if you can't think your way through the game, you're getting beat, and they were getting beat. They're playing too far off the line of scrimmage. They can't press. They can't play press man. They'll get beat every time because they're not big. They're just going to get pushed around. So how do you counteract that? How do you try to play more to the strengths of those guys back there? You got to give them time. You can't give the quarterback time. So how do you do that? Well, you put pressure on the quarterback, and that's where I still think they need to get. They need to really zero in on if they can. But it's not going to. It's just not there in the draft. It's too late for them. They're all going to be gone.
All right, so let's go back to the offensive lineman, Ali Marpet.
Yeah.
Retires at the age of 28. Okay, has a Super Bowl in his pocket. Good to know. At least he won't go ringless. Why do you think, Tom, that Ali Marpet decided to walk away at such an early age?
Well, uh, Ellie's had a couple of concussions. I don't know. There's been no talk about it. They said he's healthy, and I'm sure he is. But perhaps, he just isn't. You remember, he came from little humble. He just came out of nowhere, and he played in the league for quite a long time, made quite a bit of money, won a Super Bowl. It's possible that he's saying, you know what, all right, I've had it, I've enjoyed it, I want to try something different. It's unusual, but listen, I give the guy a lot of credit. He decided he's going to do what he's going to do, and he's going to do it under his own terms. We just didn't believe. I know it shocked the hell out of the team, and that leaves a major hole. You got a Pro Bowler right there, and unfortunately, he's not going to be back, and I can guarantee you, he's not on retirement. He'll play around with his name around to try to play Brady. So,
I mean, I give him a lot of credit. You might as well leave it 20 in if you feel like you're financially able to do it. We don't want to. Steve and I can both agree that nobody wants to hear about these guys down the road where they have CTE, mood swings, or any major head injuries. Hate to say this, folks out there recently, but in the last few months, I've even had a couple of concussions, and I still deal with some post-concussion syndrome things as well. So I can only imagine if I'm dealing with it, and I'm not even an athlete, what these guys are doing day in and day out. So, Steve, I mean, you talk about a guy like him leaving on his own terms. I guess not the worst thing in the world, is that?
No, and especially, if that's the reason. If that's the reason he's looking at his long-term health, because he's seen what's happened to other players, and you can't argue with that. I mean, he's only 29 years old, but, as we've seen, CTE can really affect people, even at that young of an age. So if that's the reason why he's retiring that young, more power to him, and I think it's the right decision.
He just got engaged too, and he announces his retirement, and then he gets engaged. So, he's got his life planned out. He's not just knee jerking it all around. He's got a plan. What that plan is, I'm not sure.
Not the worst thing. I have a few more questions here before you wrap this bad boy up here today. Let's talk about probably the move that surprised absolutely nobody. Chris Godwin getting the franchise tag at Tampa. Obviously coming off an injury, but the Buccaneers aren't really worried about that. They know what an incredible offensive player that he is. But, let's face it, we all know how important that he is to that franchise, Tom.
Yeah, he's important to it, but he's got an ACL, MCL, rehab going right now. Yeah, if you're going to use the franchise tag, he's the guy you're going to use it on. You're going to roll the dice with him because he's that type of player. He's an extraordinarily talented player. There was nobody else that I could see on that football team that I would have thought even considered get that franchise tag. My concern is, though, how is he going to come back? Is he going to come back to the Chris Godwin that we remember? Is he going to be able to hold up? Is he going to lose a little bit of speed? Is he lose a little this, a little that? I don't know. And that's always a big question mark. It's roll the dice. It probably gives the team 1 year. Will they get a long-term deal? I think they're going to try, but I don't know if the numbers are going to make sense unless they can get the contract written out in such a way that they're covering their butt in case his ACL, MCL situation doesn't come to 100% fruition. So I think that's one of the holdups that could possibly be, because everybody wants the guarantee. I don't think the Bucs are willing to give that guarantee unless they know that he is 100%. But he is the guy, and he's worthy of what they gave him. There's no question. Mike Evans is, people say he's the number one guy today. He hasn't been the number one guy for 2 years. Chris Godwin's been the number one guy. He really is. Evans has come up big in some games, but if I had to put a player out there to get open for me, and it was my life dependent on it, I'm taking Godwin.
Steve, some observations on Godwin?
Yeah, I really like him. I think he's a tremendous player, and I think they really missed him after he went down. I mean, I know Brady relied on Evans quite a bit, but Godwin's the guy that consistently moves the chain kind of guy. And he makes big plays. I just think you just hope he's going to be back and be the player that he was. I mean, that was a pretty serious injury, but as we've seen in the past, guys are recovering a lot better with those nowadays. They've made a lot of improvements in that surgery, but it's still not a given until he gets back on the football field. But I totally agree with that.
Well, there's no way I cannot bring this up, even though I don't want to do it, but I have no choice because my instincts are beating inside of me. But let's talk about Antonio Brown. If that wasn't the biggest display of whatever you want to call it, then I don't know. All right, Steve, we're going to lead off with you, and then we're going to go to Tom on Antonio Brown. I know we've talked about it.
Yeah.
So whether I would ever get a job anywhere else, and knowing him, if Greg Hardy could get another job, he could, but we'll get to the heart. But Antonio Brown. So, all right, Steve, obviously we're talking to the national audience as well as the Tampa audience. Let's give us your thoughts about Antonio Brown.
Yeah, I mean, he's his own worst enemy, it comes down to. I mean, the guy is supremely talented. There's no doubt about his talent on the football field. He's been successful everywhere he's gone, but he's run himself out of 3 really good franchises because of his off the field issues. And I mean, now he took another shot at Bruce Arians. I mean, just the other day. So, I mean, this guy, somebody's going to give him a job. I do not think he's done yet because they're all enticed by his talent. But, I mean, he's a basket case. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I mean, Brady vouched for him, and they brought him in, and he was like a pretty good guy last year when they won the Super Bowl, and he just came off the rails like he always tends to do this
year. All right, Tom, what's your
Steve, the only thing, and this whole thing with Antonio Brown came down to his performance bonus that he wanted to get and felt that he wasn't getting the football because they didn't want to give him that performance bonus. That's bull. All right? Let's say, so that he was complaining about not getting he complained at halftime about not getting the football. And Brady says, I'll get it to you. All right? But then it got towards the end of the game and he was not getting it there. And, I don't know if he was brain dead or what, but he had one more game to play. It wasn't as if that was the game that was going to determine whether or not he was going to get the performance bonus, as we saw the following week when some guy by the name of Gronkowski got his. So,
and as Brady went back on the field to make sure Gronkowski got it, he would have done the same thing for Brown.
Yeah. It's insane. I'm really bummed out about Antonio Brown because he is a very talented player. But by God, I mean, if there's any little thing that goes wrong, like you said, Steve, he is a basket case. And he just flies off the handle, and he's a guy that I don't even want to have around me when he gets that way. And no team does. But someone's going to take a chance on him because this is the National Football.
Well, I'll give you guys a prediction of 2 places where I think he should go. Number 1, he should go with the Baltimore Ravens. Maybe Lamar Jackson, he could see that thing through. And if that doesn't work, I think he should go to Branson, Missouri, because I'm sure his act would be pretty good with the tourist dollars that would be in Branson, Missouri. And don't get me wrong, Branson, Missouri is a pretty cool place. Enjoyed the entertainment, but I think that Antonio Brown should go to Branson, Missouri. You guys make such a great segue. Why don't we talk about Bruce Arians, shall we? Absolutely. Okay, so with that said, Mr. Patriot, okay, now Bruce Arians has a challenge ahead of him, okay? How good of a coach is he? And I guess, Tom, when we bring that up, we'll even mention Jameis Winston and connect the dots, but we're going to give Mr. Patriot an opportunity. How good of a coach is Bruce Arians, Steve, and what kind of a challenge does he have in Tampa now that Tom Brady is long gone? Sorry, Marty Harwell loves me upstairs, and I love you too, Uncle. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I think I think he's a very good coach. I don't doubt that whatsoever. But he has a very big challenge in front of him this year. They have a ton of free agents. As Tom was saying earlier, they need to make a decision on which ones they need to build around, because a lot of them, are older. So they need to figure out in which direction they're going to go, who they're going to keep. I mean, it's going to be a tough decision with a lot of these guys. I think it's going to be difficult. It's not above the realm of possibility that the Bucs can make it all work. It's just everything's going to have to hit right for them this year.
Oh, yeah. You're absolutely right, Steve. Down you hit right. They need luck. It may be Andrew Luck. Couldn't think of it. But that's that.
Wouldn't that be something?
That would be something. And you know what? They have a better chance of doing something like that than they do trying to make a trade for somebody that everybody's been talking about. And really, would you rather, if you talk Andrew Luck to come out and have him a quarterback your team, or would you rather have Jimmy Garoppolo and try to make a deal with San Francisco? Or would you want Deshaun Watson with his, 22 cases of, trouble? Who knows? Who knows? These guys here, Arians, he's a great guy. He's a good coach. He's a straight up guy. Players respect him. But any coach is going to have a tough time trying to do something when they lose Tom Brady. Because Tom Brady, without him, last year, they would have lost 6 more games. They would have never even come anywhere near it. That guy was worth 6 more wins. So you take that away from them now, they're a 500 football team. They say, hey, Arians doesn't want to have a quarterback, a rookie quarterback, Kyle Trask, if he's going to retire. Hell, if I'm going to retire, what's the difference? All right, what do I do? Do I look selfish and say, okay, Blaine Gabbert, when I know I'm not going to make I may not even make the playoffs. You might get lucky to get in there, but why not do something good for the franchise and have Trask, just take
exactly.
Well, I know a lot of folks nationally are going to wonder whether Jameis Winston could return to Tampa. I mean, that's a question.
Don't say that. Don't say
No, I know. They're going to wonder, Tom. I have to bring it up. Doesn't mean you got to like it. But if I were a betting man, and I'm not, okay, I say it's not going to happen. I think he goes with the 2 that he has, or they may end up finding somebody else in the trade market. We'll leave it at that. Now, we don't want to go ahead and get you upset there, even though we know that Jameis Winston, what do they go out there and flip the biscuit? Is that what they called it there?
The finger licking biscuit.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh my God! I mean, I forgot what it said. You know what? I've been out of my mind so long with those guys.
Oh, that's okay, Tom.
That guy caused more consternation. He was the complete opposite of Tom Brady. When Brady could win, Jameis could blow. And he was just as good at blowing games as Brady was winning games. There's no way to. There's no way. No, Scott, it's not happening. I'm going to make sure that.
Hey, Tom, I believe you. Hey, you're an influential figure on the Tampa. I know that people will go ahead and listen to you, Gene Deckerhoff, and the rest of those people. But I will say this, though. if Bruce Arians ever decides to leave the Buccaneers, you won't have any trouble finding two outstanding candidates in Todd Bowles or Byron Leftwich. So, in my opinion, if Bruce decides, I don't want this anymore, the first two calls won't even have to spend a dime on gas, regardless of what cost it's going to be, because Todd Bowles and Byron Leftwich, I think, would be two outstanding successors for Bruce down the road. I think we probably could get a unanimous one here, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I think that if there's going to be an heir apparent,
Yeah.
more than likely will be one of the two, and I think it'll be fun.
All right, so you know what? We're going to take a trip down memory lane. I know we talked about this before, okay? So you guys ready? Of course, all of us are old enough to understand it, okay? But once upon a time, the Bucs and the Lions were in the same division, okay? And I used to love being a student at USF. I always knew I could see the Lions once a year at Tampa Stadium. They don't think they had a name for it then. Don't even care. I don't put names out there anyways, except what I really believe they are. But it was great. I used to go to the games. And then what I did is when I went onto the Detroit Monitor, I would fly down. I always like to make that trip and then go take Busch Gardens and USF into the picture. So tell me, Tom, okay, you've been in that market for a lot of years. What are your thoughts about the Lions and the Buccaneers rivalry back in the day? I mean, I loved it. I thought it was great. You had a Midwestern fan base there. We all know that every team in what Chris Berman calls the NFC North, right? Where you had the Bears, you had the Vikings, and you had the Packers and the Lions. You know full well that Tampa Stadium was definitely not all creamsicle orange.
Right. No, I really enjoyed that. Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, Chicago was in there, so I had the chance to see my hometown team. I grew up near Chicago. But the fact is that back then, just the rivalry between the Buccaneers and the Lions. I think the Lions still hold the series lead if you go all the way back to the inception of when they first started playing against each other. But in the latter stages of the NFL, it's been more swayed to the Bucs. But God, they had some games. It was always a 3-point spread, and somebody was going to win by 3. It was going to be a late kick, or it was going to be something, a late touchdown. It was always fun football to watch. So the team was really running for anything at that point in time. Except one year when they met in the playoffs. Let's see, was it the new stadium? I can't remember. The old Spurl or the new stadium? I think it might have been the new stadium. Was it? I don't know. Whatever. That was the one and only time I think those two teams ever met in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to forget about that game, to be honest with you.
I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, of course, the Lions haven't had a lot of playoff success, but I will give you a couple interesting stories. I did see Barry Sanders run for 2 80-yard touchdowns in one game when the Lions were there. I'm sure you know my old buddy Chip Namias as well. Chip and I have been close for a lot of years. And more importantly, I think something that was interesting was Wayne Fonts being the head coach of the Lions. I went to school with his son Mike Fonts over at the University of South Florida. We were in the same degree in communication department, so it was pretty neat how you bring all these circles. I know we got Steve Balestrieri looking at us again. All right, these two.
31-29.
What's that?
Yeah.
Tom was correct. I looked it up. 31-29. Detroit leads overall all time.
Look at this guy. Our crack statistician, Steve Balestrieri, wears a lot of different hats. You know, I got to tell you, it's been an absolute blast to talk to two of the finest people. My right-hand man, Steve Balestrieri. My left-hand person today, Tom Korun, let alone what my brother Lonnie would say, my adopted hometown, or one of them, Tampa, Florida. I know I'm due for a trip out there. I've already promised Tom a trip, and we're going to go to a local place called the Black Rock Bar and Grill. My brother, obviously, it's a restaurant that he, they have a franchise owner out there, but he's the guy. But I know we're due for a trip. And I know I need to get back to Tampa. I can sit here and ramble on and on about my Tampa connections, and I think I've done a good job of that today anyway. So, but meanwhile, I got to tell you, I'm glad we've had a chance to cover lots of different things about the Tampa sports scene, and I think we did it fairly well, beginning from the Rays to USF, Tampa, of course, the Lightning, and of course, how can we forget about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? So, for some reason, I don't know what the Buccaneers situation is going to look like. Maybe we'll see it in the next several weeks as free agency and the draft comes to fold. All we're doing right now is speaking as of 3/11/2022, so there's an awful lot to go ahead and unpack there. But, any closing thoughts, Tom?
Well, I just want to close it by this. I want to thank you for allowing me to be on your show and to be able to talk to all the people there in South Florida as well. I haven't had a chance to do this since the old Sunshine Network days, but we have a great state. I wish we had better teams, but the fact of the matter is that we're so fortunate to be able to be here, to enjoy what we have here, and I just I wish both of you guys the best of luck down the road. And Steve, why don't you tag along with Scott when he comes up here? And,
Absolutely, I would love that.
Oh, we'll make it happen. I remember I said, guys, at the top of the program, I-75 triangle. All I got to do is just jump on Alligator Alley, pick up Steve Balestrieri, right wherever he's at. He just meet me over Fenway South for all I care, because that's right up 75. Pick the guy up. He just has to deal with my lead foot, so that's okay. He'll be with my wife, Candy. They'll have their tablet wondering, what the heck are you doing? Scott, this isn't Daytona. It's I-75, but that's all right. And then we'll take our ride up to, as I mentioned, Black Rock up there. But, hey, Tom, is there any way that a lot of folks can get a hold of you? Anything you want to put out there? Twitter, social media, and whatnot?
Well, yeah. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Tom Korun. This is my name is spelled there. And on Facebook, you can find me on Facebook. I don't do Instagram. I don't do TikTok. All right, I don't do that stuff. But you can find me on Twitter and Facebook, and outside of that, hell, you don't find me anywhere. No.
Well, no, we will find you everywhere when I go ahead and invite you back to other shows, and I guarantee you, we'll give you your money's worth time-wise there. At least no worry, Tom. I can't wait till we finally meet in person. But all right, Steve, the drill at the end. Let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at SteveB7SFG and Facebook, Instagram, Steve Balestrieri.
All right, and for a lot of you folks that are watching on the YouTube channel, you can subscribe to the South Florida YouTube channel or visit www.southfloridatribune.com, or you can follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. And, for those that aren't watching it, I just said it so you can hear it. If you want to hear the broadcast, you can do so on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeart, wherever you get your podcast. So we get it out there. So if you can't see it, you can hear it. And all I can tell you is it's been an absolutely great time associating with two class acts. Tom, like I said, I've known about you for a lot of years, and now it's great that I have you. I remember having an opportunity to get to know Gene Deckerhoff as well. So Gene is classic, but I could sit there and give all these name plugs all day long, but it doesn't matter. The only two names that really matter the most on this broadcast are Steve Balestrieri and Tom Korun, and of course my University of South Florida Bulls and the Tampa Tribune. It doesn't get any more than that here with the South Florida Tribune WSFT Broadcast Network. So, guys, once again, I can't thank you enough for joining us on this edition of the Sports Exchange. And, Steve, obviously we have Tom, as if you can hardly tell, Steve Balestrieri and I do an awful lot of stuff together. I keep this guy busy. I mean, really, right, Steve?
Yes, you do.
But you know what? He don't complain. This guy's a jack of all trades, whether he's talking about military football or getting cauliflower ears listening to some of my outrageous suggestions. It's all about the one thing I really want to say before we close the show is when I bring new individuals to meet each other, not only is the networking thing so dynamite, but to have the opportunity to bring new people and get them to know one another, to me, is what I think makes this an unbelievable thing to do. And now, at least because of our technology, whether we like it or not, Tom, Steve, you got a new friend here. And again, I value you guys an awful lot as well. So it all comes full circle.
Yeah. You guys, love you.
All right, on behalf of Tom Korun and Steve Balestrieri, my name is Scott Morgan, Roth the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Sports Exchange. Have a great weekend, everybody. Goodbye now.